Now we'll move on to the focus of today's session, how to vote cards for regional elections. As we go, remember to use the Q&A function if you have any questions. In this portion of the webinar, we'll do a deep dive into how to vote cards, also called as HTVCs, for Legislative Council elections. We'll also cover things specific to Legislative Council or Upper House elections, like group registration and group voting tickets. Today, we're covering the different types of how to vote cards, how to submit your how to vote card for the registration, the authorization and endorsement requirements, ensuring your how to vote card is compliant, what happens after how to vote card registration, the rules around distributing a how to vote card, group registration and group voting tickets. How to vote cards are a specific type of electoral campaign material that, along with the rules of all electoral campaign materials, are also bound by legislation that covers how they can be distributed on election day outside voting centres.
You're likely familiar with how to vote cards from participating in previous elections. A how to vote card is any electoral material that includes a representation of a ballot paper, including partial or purported partial representations of a ballot paper, or lists the name of any or all of the candidates for an election with a number indicating an order of voting preference against the names of any or all of those candidates. If you intend to distribute how to vote cards on election day outside voting centres, you must apply to have them registered by the Victorian Electoral Commission. Registered how to vote cards are the only electoral campaign material that can be distributed within 400 metres of a voting centre on election day.
There are three types of how to vote cards. A single how to vote card contains voting instructions for one electoral district or region. Any person or groups can submit a single how to vote card. That includes candidates, registered political parties, interest groups, and individuals. A combined how to vote card contains voting instructions for one or more electoral district or regions for which the registered political party has endorsed a candidate. A multiple how to vote card contains voting instructions for every electoral district and or region for which the registered political party has endorsed a candidate. Only a registered political party can submit a combined or a multiple how to vote card. Registration for how to vote card will open on Tuesday the 10th of November and close at 12 noon on Friday the 20th of November. For registered political parties, we ask registered officers to book an appointment to submit their how to vote cards for registration at the VC head office. You should review the requirements of how to vote card submission prior to your appointment and ensure your how to vote cards are compliant, because if your how to vote card does not meet the requirement for registration, your application will be refused. These requirements are explained in detail in the candidate handbook with an applications checklist. If your application is refused, we will provide the grounds for refusal and you may submit a new how to vote card application with the issues corrected. However, this will be time-consuming and will ultimately delay the registration process. So please check your how to vote card carefully for even small things like spelling of candidate's name, spelling of Victorian Electoral Commission, and that the authorization statement is correct. If you submit your how to vote card on the last day for submission and your how to vote card is refused, you will not be able to submit a new application once the registration period has closed.
This slide outlines the how to vote card submission process for RPPs. I would like to draw your attention to step 2. For each how to vote card you submit, you must provide the card in a soft copy PDF format and 2 hard copies. When you are ready, book your appointment with the candidate services team to lodge your how to vote card at the VC's head office. Make sure you upload the soft copy onto DEX prior to your appointment. We'll provide you with an instructional guide on how to upload and use DEX. Each how to vote card must be accompanied by a hard copy declaration form, which we'll provide to parties by email ahead of the election. You must also provide translations in hard copy of any writing that is in a language other than English on your how to vote card. The VC will not pre-approve templates for your how to vote cards. You can discuss your how to vote card with your election manager or with the candidate services team if you have any questions. However, you're encouraged to first make use of the handbook and the checklists available. If your application is refused, we will notify you of the outcome directly by 12 noon on the day after you submit your application, and will provide the grounds for your refusal. You can submit a new application with a corrected version of your How to Vote card before registrations close. If your How to Vote card is registered, it will be made available on the VEC website and can be distributed outside voting centres on election day. If you would like your registered How to Vote cards distributed at mobile voting centres, you must provide printed copies to the relevant election manager.
Anyone can register a How to Vote card, not just registered political parties. The requirements for what are on the How to Vote cards and for how they can be distributed are the same for registered political parties as they are for any other person or group registering a How to Vote card. If you're not registering a How to Vote card on behalf of a registered political party, you need to submit the How to Vote card to the election manager of the relevant district or region within the registration period. Call the election office to make an appointment from Tuesday, the 3rd of November. Here is the step-by-step process to submitting a How to Vote card for anyone other than an RPP. You must submit your How to Vote card to the election manager in a soft copy PDF format by mail and 2 hard copies in person. You will also need to submit a How to Vote card. You also need to submit a hard copy declaration form and translation if any languages other than English appear on the card. Check your card carefully for spelling and to ensure it follows the rules. And if you're unsure, check the requirements in the candidate handbook. If your How to Vote card registration is refused, you can submit a corrected version before registration closes.
And that was a soft copy by email, not by mail. If your How to Vote card is registered, it will be made available for download on the VEC website and can be distributed at voting centres on election day. You can provide printed copies to the relevant election manager to use at mobile voting centres. Remember that only registered How to Vote cards can be handed out within 400 metres of a voting centre on election day. The registration period for How to Vote cards opens on Tuesday, the 10th of November and closes at 12 noon on Friday, the 20th of November.
How to Vote cards, like all printed electoral campaign material, must be authorised. To authorise something is to include a name and address somewhere visible on the material. That's what forms the authorisation statement. An address should be the usual address of the person, political party, group or organisation. It should include the street number, street name, suburb or town and state. It does not have to be a residential address. It could be the business or office address that they have a regular access to. A PO box or email address is not acceptable. Parties can use a registered party name and address in their authorisation statement if they wish.
How to Vote cards must also include the details of who printed it. Alongside the authorisation statement, include the printer's name and place of business. Authorisation statements must always be in English, as well as any other language used in the electoral campaign material. The authorisation statement must also be legible from a distance that is appropriate to the way people viewing the material will be seeing it. If an authorisation statement is too small or obscured by poor design choices, like overlapping images or poorly contrasting colours, then it is unlikely to satisfy the requirement. For more information on authorisation guidelines, including examples of authorisation statements, please refer to the authorisation webpage on the VEC website or the candidate handbooks. Registered How to Vote cards must also include the registration endorsement. Here is what the full authorisation and endorsement that you must include in the footer of the card looks like. Authorised by, the name and street address of the authoriser, not a PO box. Printed by, the name and place of business of the printer. And registered by the Victorian Electoral Commission. You must not distribute a How to Vote card containing the registration endorsement if that How to Vote card has not yet been registered, even at early voting centres. We strongly recommend that you don't print How to Vote cards with the endorsement statement until your How to Vote card has been successfully registered.
You should obtain permission before including certain materials on your How to Vote card. This includes photos of people other than yourself. images that identify specific organisations or quotes from third parties. In the past, organisations have objected to being featured because it implies that they officially endorse a candidate. While the use of such material would not prevent a How to Vote card registration unless it was in breach of another requirement, we recommend that you obtain a permission where relevant to avoid time-consuming disputes, including possible civil action as well as reprinting costs.
It's important to note that the VEC does not provide legal advice and has limited authority to regulate content of electoral campaign material, except where the material is offensive, obscene, or likely to mislead or deceive an elector in casting their vote.
Make sure your How to Vote card complies with all the requirements to avoid it being refused registration. You should double check that the card clearly identifies the person, registered political party, or group on whose behalf it's distributed. Any logos or emblems are at least 4 square centimeters when printed. If you shrink your card for printing after registration, ensure the logo stays above this size. The authorization statement, printer's details, and the endorsement statement are visible and legible. The card does not contain material that is offensive or obscene. All candidates and parties shown are spelled correctly, listed in the official ballot order under the correct group letter, and the card does not mislead in the casting of the vote. We'll go into more detail on misleading content now.
The ballot paper for a Legislative Council region election allows for electors to choose to vote either above the line by marking a single preference for a group, or below the line by marking preferences for at least 5 individual candidates. Groups are printed from left to right along the ballot paper in the order they were drawn in the ballot drawer, followed by ungrouped candidates. A square will appear above the line for each group, and a letter of the alphabet is assigned to each group. If your How to Vote card contains a representation of a Legislative Council region ballot paper, you must make sure that the card is not misleading in the casting of the vote. That is, ensuring that any voter who follows the instructions on the How to Vote card will submit a complete and formal ballot paper which reflects their intended choice. You must include either an indication of a voting preference for one group above the line, or a statement instructing the voter to place a number 1 above the line for their preferred group of candidates, or an indication of an order of voting preference for all candidates below the line, or a depiction of statement instructing the voter to place at least the numbers 1 to 5 in order of preference against the names of candidates below the line. You should ensure that any voting instruction statements do not imply that the only way to formally vote is to follow the How to Vote card, and do not contradict the voting instructions on VEC issued ballot papers. The checks for misleading material on How to Vote cards also apply for How to Vote cards that contain a representation of a Legislative Assembly district ballot paper. Please see our information session for How to Vote cards for Legislative Assembly elections or the candidate handbook for more information.
Shortly after your How to Vote card is registered, we'll publish it on the VEC website and make it available for anyone to view it at both VEC's head office and at the relevant election office. If you need to correct an error on your How to Vote card, you must submit an amended version of your card for re-registration no later than 12 noon on Monday the 23rd of November. Once we receive your amended card, we will notify you of the outcome by 12 noon the following day. The rules for distributing How to Vote cards differ depending on where you are distributing them. How to Vote cards that have been registered by the VEC are the only electoral material that can be distributed within 400 metres of a voting centre on election day. This limitation does not apply to posters or similar materials that are attached to a structure or vehicle, material in a campaign office, or the normal distribution of a newspaper. Any election manager or election official can ask a person they reasonably suspect to be distributing unregistered How to Vote card to produce their How to Vote card for inspection and hand over all unregistered cards.
How to Vote cards distributed at an early voting centre don't need to be registered. However, they must contain the name and address of the person authorising the card and they must not be likely to mislead or deceive an elector in casting their vote. How to vote cards distributed at early voting centres that have not been registered by the Victorian Electoral Commission must not contain the endorsement. How to vote cards for mobile voting must be registered and provided to the election office for inclusion in the mobile voting pack. Mobile voting begins from 9 a.m. on Tuesday the 17th of November. So if you would like your How to Vote card included for mobile voting, please consider making your appointment in time for them to be registered and provided to the election manager ahead of that date. Mobile voting centres will also display a QR code on a poster that directs electors to the registered How to Vote cards on the VEC website.
That covers How to Vote cards for Legislative Council regional elections. Election participants should also be aware of the requirements for group registration and group voting tickets. 2 or more candidates nominating as a region candidate may request that their name be grouped together on the ballot paper. They may also request that their names appear in a specific order. A group can be made up of 2 or more independent candidates, 2 more candidates endorsed by the same party, or a composite group of 2 or more candidates endorsed by different parties. Groups must then provide at least one group voting ticket.
To create a group on the ballot paper, you must submit a request for group registration form to the VEC. This is available in the candidate kit or on the VEC website. Requests must be lodged with the VEC before 12 noon on Monday the 9th of November, which is the same time as the close of nominations. A group may amend, withdraw, or replace its request up to 12 noon on Monday the 9th of November. Any one candidate may not be included in more than one group. All candidates wishing to be included in a group must first have completed the nomination process before the group can be registered. For independent candidates, the election manager will provide you with details on how to submit a group registration form to the VEC as part of your nomination appointment. The request for group registration form must be signed by each independent candidate in the group. For party endorsed candidates, the registered officer of the party will submit the form on your behalf.
When registering a group, registered political parties can request that the name of the party or an abbreviation can be printed on the ballot paper above the line and next to each candidate name below the line. The form of the party's name is specified by the party when filling in part 1 of the nomination form. When a group is registered by one or more registered political parties, the registered party logo or logos will appear above the line on the ballot paper. Parties that are not registered with the VEC are not entitled to have a party name, abbreviation, or logo printed on ballot papers, no matter how the party is constituted.
Requests for group registration forms for endorsed candidates must be signed by the registered officer of the party. We strongly encourage registered political parties to submit their group registration forms as part of their nomination appointments with VEC head office.
A group voting ticket is a document that sets out an order of preference for all candidates in a Legislative Council region election. If an elector votes above the line, they place a 1 in the square above one group. Their vote is deemed to follow the group voting ticket registered for the group that they have voted for. If more than one group voting ticket is submitted by a group, all the above the line votes for that group are allocated equally between the group voting tickets, with any remainder allocated randomly. If you or your registered political party registers a group, you must submit at least 1 or up to 3 group voting tickets for that group. If you fail to lodge a group voting ticket before the deadline, your group will be ineligible to have any above the line square printed against your group and financial penalties apply.
After the ballot draw, we will provide registered political parties and independent region candidates with group voting ticket templates which list the candidates in ballot paper order. You must use these templates to prepare and lodge your group voting tickets before the submissions close. Please note that the time frame for submitting group voting tickets is short. Submissions open on Tuesday the 10th of November and close the following day at 12 noon on Wednesday the 11th of November. Lodgement can be made by appointment at the VEC head office, and we really recommend that you book in during your nomination appointment. Group voting tickets cannot be lodged with a district election manager. A group voting ticket can be amended, withdrawn, or replaced before 12 noon on Wednesday, the 11th of November. If you register more than one group voting ticket, you must give preferences to candidates in your own group in the same order on each group voting ticket. Group voting ticket booklets will be publicly available at all voting centres and on the VEC website. We go into more detail on group voting tickets in the candidate handbook, so we encourage you to learn more.
That concludes a deep dive into how to vote cards for Legislative Council regional election. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function now. If you're having trouble with the Q&A function, email your questions to candidate.vec.vic.gov.au. For any questions that come through that relate to individual circumstances or are of technical nature, we'll take them on notice and get back to you directly in the upcoming days. We'll now go to the questions.
So we've got a question that we didn't get to during the last How to Vote Card info session. And that question is, will we get high quality logos of each political party from the VEC? These are actually already available on the VEC website on the list of registered political parties. You can access those. And we've got another question that's come through. With the authorisation, does the order of the information provided matter? In other words, is it essential that the party or candidate name address is followed by the printer's details and then followed by registered by line? And the answer is no, the order of the information doesn't matter as long as all of those three statements are there. The authorised by statement, the printed by statement, and the prescribed endorsement saying that it's registered by the Victorian Electoral Commission. As long as those three elements are there, the order of those three elements doesn't actually matter.
Okay, so we've got another question. How soon after registration will the How to Vote card be on the VEC website? So once a How to Vote card gets registered by the VEC, Victorian Electoral Commission, it will be uploaded on the VEC website as soon as practicable. We come to the end of this webinar. Here are the key dates for registering How to Vote cards, and just to remind you, registered groups must submit at least one group voting ticket. See the candidate handbook for How to Vote card requirements and carefully check your How to Vote cards before applying to register. If this briefing has raised any questions that were not covered, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us anytime or contact your election manager from Tuesday the 3rd of November when election office opens.
Join us for additional deep dives into topics specific to candidates and parties at the election at later webinars. You can view the information session schedule and register on the VEC website. Thank you again for joining us today.